Greetings and salutations, this is Derek with Taylor Whips, and today I wanted to talk about knots, and specifically artificial sinew under knots. Now, I saw somewhere that when you wax a whip, the artificial sinew inside that you use for binding breaks down. And because of an unfortunate failure in one of my whips, I've gotten to look at how artificial sinew actually behaves in a whip after it's waxed. Now, to add some context, this particular knot came off of a 5-foot stock whip that I made back in 2019. And I hadn't changed the knots or done anything other than that to the whip. It remained as the heel knot and had no motion other than what caused it to slip off. Now, it slipped off a few days ago after I re-waxed the whips. That was the second or third time I had re-waxed the whip, and up until that point I had had no trouble with it. But whatever was keeping it where it was decided to give way, and that's what resulted in the whole knot and foundation coming off of the whip. This is actually the entire assembly that came off. So this is the inside of there is the binding. This is also some binding that I used to tie off the handle strands, and then this is the entire knot foundation comprised inside of there. Now, in taking this off though, I noticed that the artificial sinew that I used both inside and all the way down at the base remained virtually unchanged, if not totally unchanged, from when I initially did the whip. And that came as a bit of a surprise, because I was under the impression that once this became submerged in wax and got up to temperature, that the wax in this thread broke down and kind of became a part of the rest of the wax, and the nylon threads broke down and were more or less just held in place by the solidified wax after the fact. But that isn't the case, at least with this. This is, of course, the what initially bound off the strands. This is a little bit of athletic tape that I apparently forgot to remove before I began. And then the rest is just this artificial sinew. I have here a new roll of artificial sinew, and the color and the texture is unchanged. This can stick to the roll just like it would. It behaves just as it would. I can pull on that and I feel the waxy residue, but it is essentially the same artificial sinew that went into the whip with no change. I actually, this knot came off of a pair of whips, and I figured if I'm going to redo one knot, I might as well redo the other. This is the other knot. I'm going to take that away, and also that. So starting with the knot itself, I was able to pull everything out. You can see that this is just one complete knot. And underneath of that knot was this. Now, this is what I used to make the heel cap and then to shape the knot. And it, being the closest to the surface, you'd think that this would have changed. And it hasn't. This is exactly the same as the roll of artificial sinew. Same with this jumbled mess. I ended up cutting this all out. That was what initially bound off the threads, and it too is unchanged. And so it's changed my perspective on artificial sinew and its breakdown. Knowing that this was in a heel knot and did not undergo any motion, it perhaps is different than if it were in, say, a belly of a whip or just underneath the overlay. And this may stretch and break down over time. However, in a stationary circumstance, this has remained totally unchanged and is exactly like it was when I put it in. And so, according to what I see in this, I don't know if artificial sinew actually does change at all or break down just by waxing. Because as I mentioned, this has been waxed 2 or 3 times. It's undergone years of use, and even the stuff that was right underneath the knot is exactly like it was when I first installed it. A brief note about the heel knot that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I believe that the culprit for why it slipped was the failure of the adhesive in the athletic tape. I've noticed that the layers of parachute core that were braided underneath it were unchanged, as well as the artificial sinew being uncompromised. And so the athletic tape would have been the only place for failure. And being as that was the place where it slipped, not in any of the layers of artificial sinew, but at that juncture, I believe that it was the adhesive agent in that tape that caused it to fail. Perhaps you've seen other things with your artificial sinew and your whips. Let me know what you think, and if you have a different experience, or if this changes your perception or your understanding. It has mine. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on my next adventure.